The biggest thing for me has been contractors. They've made me the most and lost me the most money based on who I've picked. Ultimately, it's my decision and my management, right?
Hello everybody, we're here with Chris Weaver at an awesome flip house that he just finished in Holiday, Utah on Arcadia Lane. So Chris, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here.
Well, cool. Well, what we hope to accomplish today in this interview are a few different things. We're going to get to know Chris a little bit better and how he got into flipping and real estate, which I think is helpful for you that haven't started yet to maybe get that motivation and boost to take that plunge if you've been thinking about it. Talk about your evolution of how things worked maybe at the start and how they're maybe working now. And then this is an awesome house that you're going to see some before and afters of that we'll dive into. So we'll just get started. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been flipping for 7-8 years now. Got into it. My cousin, he was like, hey, dude, do you want to start doing this? We've both been entrepreneurial our whole lives. So we started learning about it. Took some time to educate ourselves. We did purchase a, educational program. And, people have different viewpoints, I think, on educational programs, and they're not all created alike. But the one that we did, we actually really enjoyed. But I think one of the key things over time is I continued to learn. I didn't just stop there, right? And whether that's paying for additional programs or just the experience of going through different flips and working with different people, you learn a lot over the years.
So that's interesting because you started by learning, and that was your first action step. But at some point, the learning turns into a little bit of there's a little bit of risk in going to the next step.
Yeah.
So was that hard for you to get the courage to go, okay, I think I've learned everything I'm going to learn? Because clearly, I think we'll hear throughout the story is what you thought you learned by the book did probably not turn out to be to what you were experiencing in practice.
Yeah, it definitely adapts, right? Because you see what is being taught, and that's very much one method or their approach to how they do it. But I think that there's a lot of different approaches that you can take to the game of investing, even within flipping, right? Like people have different models, people have different buy boxes, what they're looking for as far as what type of asset they want to flip or where in the market they feel like they want to flip price point wise. Yeah. And I think everybody kind of finds different where they fit within that, and it takes some time to identify that.
So what kind of got you to just go, okay, this is now what I want to do? What were you doing before
real estate at all? At the time, I was actually working in the housing department at Vivint, funny enough. So security system company, all of you are probably familiar with, but I was finding housing for their reps and their tech teams across the US and Canada.
Okay.
And working long hours doing that. But like I said, it was kind of this in-between thing. I was deciding whether I was going to go back to school, if I wanted to work a different job. So it was kind of this job that I was working in the meantime. And then we got involved in, once we started learning, we got into our first property, our second property, and then started scaling up from there.
So let's not spend a ton of time on it, but talk about that initial, how did you get from the book and the course to your first deal? And what was that like? Actually, that's probably a good segue into how you've kind of evolved and progressed, and then kind of what your strategy was then and what it is now.
Yeah, we picked up this home in a neighborhood that probably wasn't the neighborhood to start in. It was in kind of a higher end at the time, but it was several years ago, right? So $500,000 home then versus now is completely different.
Yeah. It's like $1 million home now.
Yeah, exactly. Like that same home up in Suncrest, the very top of the hill in Draper. It snowed, and when you're driving up there, the snow's 8 feet, on either side of the road.
Yeah.
So that was an experience in and of itself. But we made money. We made. I think we sold that for right around $450,000. I think we netted about $40,000 on it.
See, that's awesome, because I'm guessing that probably was half of what you were making.
Yeah,
Vivint, right?
Yeah, I mean, at least half, totally. Especially back then, that was when $10-12 an hour was kind of your entry level position. And like I said, it was kind of just that in between. But that's what kind of got us hooked, and we found that we enjoyed the work enough that we were like, let's go do this again. And multifamily's always been kind of the goal of getting into for me.
Yeah.
But flipping has kind of helped me get in at a starting point and develop the relationships and start building that over time. Because relationships have been the biggest thing, whether it's been finding more deals, finding more financial resources to scale up with. It kind of got me in at those smaller price points to start building that network and database.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you just started creating a little bit of momentum. And then at what point did you feel confident enough to go, okay, this actually could replace your prior job?
So
second flip, third flip?
I actually quit before our first one.
Oh, really?
I had saved some money up.
Okay.
And for me, it was one of those things where, and I was young, I had no expenses, I have no, right. Single dude,
yeah.
So it was very easy to make the jump. And for other people, though, I think it's understanding your situation, because there's other people that are married, have kids, have different.
Yep.
I think everybody can do this, but your circumstance may be different. So it may take a little bit more time to go full time.
Well, and you can't go back and recreate it, but I bet you were more successful quicker because you had that pressure of there's nothing right. I mean, obviously you're a smart guy. You could have found something different if it failed, and anyone could really, right? The end of the world doesn't happen if you just don't, if you flame out on flipping. But
yeah, you got to dive in. You got to pull the trigger on something, and you won't always win. But I think as you just get more accustomed to pulling the trigger on things, run the numbers, make sure it looks good. But you can't control every aspect. You're going to try to control as much as you can. But you got to get involved. One thing, whether the market's up, down, sideways, if you're not in the game, you're not benefiting and you're not winning.
I love that.
So you got to play.
Right now we're in a weird little market transition. So today that we're shooting this, it's the end of January 2023. And if anyone's been paying attention to real estate, we just came off of the quickest appreciation in real estate values, probably in the history of the country, of time, from when COVID hit till about May of 2022. Now we've seen a 20 to 30% drop in prices, and now I kind of feel like we're getting our feet underneath us and maybe values have stabilized. But yes, there's been some pain for properties you bought at the first of the year that you're maybe selling now, right? But being in the game and always being active, you can feel the nuances real time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I feel, right? I just bought a flip last week, and I think it's a great time to flipping. Now, it kind of maybe sucks if you have a house that you bought in May that you're I sold one today and I lost $58,000, right?
Yeah.
So that's
I just lost $70,000 last week, which a lot of people would be shocking to hear those numbers, but it does happen. And I think that a lot of people try to flex oh, they never lose, but sometimes it happens.
But what I think will happen is this attitude of let's stay in the game, read, learn what we did wrong, how we did right, and then you're going to buy one next month where you'll realize, holy cow, that was the best buy ever. You know? And so I'm sure there's been some where you've benefited from the appreciation. You didn't realize you bought it so low. And so anyway, going back to the point of always being in the game and being active, I think that's really important. Not being stupid or reckless.
Yeah.
But you're not going to time anything.
You're getting dealt a hand, and you got to play the cards that are in front of you.
Yep.
Right? You don't get other cards. But so you're trying to do your best to play that hand, and sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. But I think trying to figure out multiple exit strategies, one thing that this has helped me do is look at other opportunities.
Yeah.
You kind of get used to, I've got this thing figured out, I've got this team, I've got this and that. But then something happens, and you have to figure out a new way to play. You have to figure out a new strategy.
So talk about that, maybe just quickly hitting on maybe how you've progressed. Because, I've had the opportunity to work with Chris on some of his properties. And one thing that Chris is unbelievable at is the attention to detail, the systems, the processes, the forward thinking about what it's going to take to get to the final product and how you're going to get there. But I'm guessing you had to learn a little bit of that along the way.
Totally.
So maybe just kind of paint the picture of maybe how things started that kind of you were tripping over yourself a little bit, and maybe now how you've kind of found your groove.
Yeah, I started out flipping a lot smaller homes, more what you would consider a flip. What I would say now is we do full on renovations. We're doing remodels, not just a flip. No lipstick on a pig. I just found that burned me over time. Some people make a ton of money doing those. It just, that cycle every year and a half, it was man, you'd really get one that just really burned you, or they're just they're not as fun, they're not as interesting to me now, doing the same color scheme or the same picks on everything. I get in a business you're kind of trying to find those things to repeat over and over again. But what I've really found is I enjoy kind of the luxury market more. It's more interesting to design. There's more margin, I find, to be able to do cool things, but also be able to make better money.
Yeah, and you can stomach spending a little bit more on cool stuff.
Yeah,
because you'll get a return on it.
Yeah, and I don't have to. I think too, it changes the contracting and the team that's around you. When you're operating on small margins, it's hard to get great contractors and a great team.
Yeah, you've got to do everything yourself. You've got to worry about, not that you're not always worried about budget, but you're a lot more focused on the cheapest guy possible that might not do the best work.
And that has burned me more times than not, is finding the cheap guy, and they've not always been cheap, but they came in reasonable, but then they took 3 times as long than what they originally quoted. They didn't have their systems dialed in. Probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is hire a contractor. This is how it works for me. May not work for everybody, but what I've learned for me, I'll hire business owner first and the contractor second.
Got it.
If they have their business in order, if they're operating well, and if they're making money, they will serve you as their client really well. If they're not making money, they will leave you high and dry, and it will cost you double to get that project finished.
Is so true. And you can be really short-sighted, because how many times, if you're listening to this, that you've been flipping for a while, how many times have you hired that guy that's really good at getting jobs?
Yep.
And he'll I need half down. And then he'll work on your property to make you smile for a day, but he's got to do that to the 5 other guys. He doesn't know if he has money or not. I think that is really smart. So that's a really good tip to highlight. Hire a business owner first that knows how to run a business, that then is also actually his business is a construction company.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is really key to be able to vet that from the beginning if you're just starting is, can they give you an itemized budget?
Yeah.
And if they can't give you that within a reasonable time frame, they're probably not running a budget, or they're not used to running those numbers. So they think, oh yeah, 120. But the real number is 160.
Yeah.
Well, that $40,000 difference is once they start running out of budget, they're going to realize, oh, I'm not going to make money on that job. Well, I'm going to stop working on that and go pick up another job, because I'm going to need more money to finish that down the line.
Well, little things if they're prepared and organized and a business owner, because if you get a bid and it's but if you get a bid that says 7 doors, 3 bypass, 7 closet, they probably took their time to pay attention. So
and I think one of the things that I've learned with that then is, you hear, oh, we should be able to flip that for this much money. But if your bids aren't coming in at that with people that you trust and know are preparing accurate bids, it's not a deal.
Well, and then on your side, if you're not organized as the flipper and you're not a business owner yourself, I noticed this a lot over the years when we were doing a lot of volume and flipping, is we would get pretty careless and we'd be like, well, I'm pretty sure that last house was $40,000. This one's pretty similar. Let's put down a $40,000 remodel number.
Yeah.
We get done and we're like, how did we spend 70?
Yeah.
Because we weren't keeping track. But when you keep track and you're like, okay, budgets are kind of the same, not that you're not going to bypass your detailed bid, but you can go, that house was 3,000 square foot. So you can develop a little bit more accurate number. Well, a lot more accurate numbers if you're tracking and reflecting back on the last project that you did.
Doing those postmortems, knowing where you ended up is important. And then also, who could have predicted COVID? And then who could have predicted what that would have done to the prices of material? We went from $12 for a sheet of plywood to $50 for a sheet of plywood, right? So you might have a few properties that you're like, man, our costs are going to go up a bit. But if you're paying attention, you're planning your budgets beforehand with material and everything, on your next purchases, you're going to be aware of that. Whereas if you're not doing that, you're going to still think, oh, lumber's only going to cost this much. But that's not the case anymore. You got to continually be repricing on each project to know where things are at.
No, that's great. And okay, kind of shifting gears a little bit. What's been the hardest thing for you as you've been flipping? With all of the finding deals, financing, putting it together, relationships, selling, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Risk.
Yep.
You know, I don't know. What would you say has been your kryptonite when it comes to flipping?
The biggest thing is putting your team together.
Okay.
The right team, surrounding yourself with the right people. That can be partners, that can be contractors, that can be the right financiers. You know, you're going to have these money relationships, and that's one thing that, I mean, I don't know how many loans we've done with you, Matt, over the years, but it's been quite a few.
Yeah.
And Matt's always been one that's willing to work with us, that, you know, when we bring a deal, he's also active in real estate. So for me, it's like when I talk to him about a deal and I'm walking through it, I trust what he says back on it, whether it's positive or negative. So that's, you know, finding the right people in your market to go in and do what strategy you want. Because the biggest thing for me has been contractors. They've made me the most and lost me the most money based on who I've picked. Ultimately, it's my decision and my management, right? But who I picked for that has made me or lost me the most money. It's not been the deal. It's not been the financing. It's been the team behind it. And so finding the right team members to deploy on whatever strategy it is, whether you're flipping, multifamily, wholesaling, I think that that's the key thing.
Well, you're so right. I always say there's probably more than this, but to summarize, like the three biggest inputs for flipping is obviously the price you buy it at, the execution, which would be the team and stuff like that, and then maybe the financing, right? That's make or break for some people. If they have really lousy financing or not a good lender, the rug's going to get pulled out from underneath them. You know, but you could have the best financing, let's call it cash. You could buy the right property that would make money, but if you have the bad execution and the wrong contractor, you're toast. Yeah. Where on the flip side, you could have marginal financing, buy it right, and an amazing team, and you're going to come out okay.
Yeah, you'll make great money because you executed on what you went in to do.
And the best ones have all three. It's like anything, you know, the best ones just have it all together. Okay, so the positive side, what would you say is like your super skill when it comes to flipping?
I think for me, it's developing systems and processes. So seeing what it is that we want to do and then reverse engineering that. I love the post-mortem stuff. I love being able to go back and say, okay, what went well, what didn't go well?
Yeah.
And being able to dissect on the next one, how can we improve that? So for instance, now when it comes to planning a property, the process for that now versus when I started is completely different. So when a property goes under contract, within kind of that 10 days, I'm now putting due diligence in.
This is good. So let's go. This will be a good time to kind of transition to this house here.
Yeah, okay.
So walk us through whether it was on this one or if you were starting this one over again, just kind of talk through like your approach to making an offer. And let's go to like, we're now at a time where we have due diligence period. You're not just buying stuff blind because there's like nothing available, you know? But like your forward thinking, I think is so important. So as you guys are watching this, think through what he's really saying is like, begin with the end in mind from the start of the offer. Because you know where you're going to want to go. And to be successful, you know the steps involved from just thinking about writing that offer to what you're going to do. So I may cut you off a little bit to clarify something, but so you're writing an offer on what would be, say, a $200,000 to $300,000 remodel. You know you got a huge spread. Like think through knowing where you're going to head to what you start out doing.
Yeah, so we were looking for properties in kind of the east bench of Salt Lake County, right? And this one we saw and we said, hey, once you get going, you kind of gain this vision for properties. So it's a little easier to see, especially I think for the higher end, like, oh, I see that. And when I walked into this house, I was like, I already know what this is going to look like. This is, you know what I mean? Like, I can see it once you walk in, you know, okay, this could be a great home. This could be a great deal. And you just kind of get that feeling. There's certain deals that you get excited about once you've been doing this for a while. And so this was one of those. And so we put an offer in, they accepted it. And this was back when, you know, you're doing non-refundable earnest money.
Yeah,
so we're committed to this thing. But within the 10 days from the time we got under contract to the time we closed, we had all of our selections, all of our design selects, so lighting, plumbing fixtures, the countertops, the floors, all of that picked out in a spreadsheet, categorized. We had our material budget for at least finished material. You know, we might not have had our lumber package, but we had our contracting crew working on that. what the labor and kind of the construction material was going to be. So they're working on that. And then by the time we went to close, we had our full construction package done. So we knew what that was going to cost. We had all of our material selected, so we knew how much that was going to cost. The big thing too with the material was, since we knew what we were going to buy the day we closed, we bought all the finished material. Because I can't tell you how many times we get to where, we need a lighting fixture now because we're ready for it. Oh, well, the one we really want is actually out of stock for 3 months, so we can't get that one. So now we gotta do something else.
Man, I can't tell you how many stories of my borrowers are like, why is this taking so long? Well, the refrigerator's on back order.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, because you didn't think ahead. It's like, that's not the refrigerator's fault. That's your fault, right? So you're at closing, and at the closing table, you've already got the vision in your head on paper.
Yep.
Not just aesthetically, but the details, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Within that 10 days, we also have a full set of plans where we have the actual floor plan back. So the final floor plan. So we went through in that same 10 days, we laid everything out, resubmitted that to our drafter. He kicked that back to us. And so within that 10 days, we were still waiting another, I think, week and a half for engineering to be done.
Sure.
But we had a viable plan ready to go from the day we closed. And then, we spent the 40 to 60K on finished material. We got all of that in. So all of our fixtures, all of our appliances was within the next 60 days. We had it either in our garage or in our storage unit, ready to go as soon as they were ready for it.
And
on the property.
Unlike a lot of flippers that are doing higher end houses that would require a permit, you're not being bashful or covering the windows or pretending like no one's working on the house. You've contracted with the city, you've got a permit going. But to get to this point, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. You have already identified those team members that will be useful and helpful and professional, and they have buy-in. And so they're like, great, next project, here's the plans, here's what we're doing. Yeah. You're not swimming upstream on stuff that you don't have to swim upstream, because the remodel itself is already going to be hard enough.
Yeah, what we kind of identified early on, just in years of experiences, early on in this project and a few others that we've been doing now with this process, is we got to give the vision of what we want at the end of the day for these things to look like. Because when construction guys come in and contractors come in, they don't know.
Yeah.
They assume what they think. Yep. But what they think is not always what you think and what you want. So we came up with design boards for each space so that they know exactly, okay, these are all the elements. This is the actual lighting fixture that's going in here. Yeah. It's not only here in visual representation, but here is a spreadsheet. If you're a spreadsheet guy, some guys are, a lot of guys aren't. But as long as the head guy can know how to work a spreadsheet, that's the important piece. The main GC, if he knows how to get into a spreadsheet, that's important. Because then that'll tell them where everything goes, what it needs to look like, how you want it. The more you can communicate that, the more accurate finished product you're going to get to your original vision.
So what I'm hearing is you have a skill that is pretty immediate, where you can walk in and see and visualize what you're going to end up with. But not everybody does. So in order to help them, Chris has a laminated set of floor plans. He has a laminated book that has all the selections, so that someone that is coming in, the plumber, the electrician, they can already kind of touch it and feel it and see your vision.
Yep.
And you're going to get better work because it's very clear what's being expected, and you're going to get a little bit more of a buy-in and better workmanship, I think, because people can really feel like, oh, this isn't just, I'm not just installing, electrical wires. I'm actually helping build this final product.
Yeah. And the next thing that we're really trying to focus on is making sure that the crew that's there feels, what are the things for them that are important that we need to have on site for them, so that they feel valued, that they feel important. I think that's kind of the next thing that we're really trying to integrate.
That's important.
Because if they feel valued and important on the job site, you're going to get a much better quality product at the end of the day, or they're just going to pay attention more and bring things up to you. Like one of our tile guys now, he's great. He always is like, hey, I noticed this when I was there.
Yeah.
And that's so appreciated from my end, because whether I was able to get there that day or not, the fact that he's bringing that forward to me makes such a big difference.
Saves you time. They'll clean up after themselves. And what they won't do, where we've all had that have been doing this a while, the horror stories of, the contractors are using that to actually be their house or to do drugs in or whatever it might be, right?
And if you hire the right guy up front, the main head guy, most of the team that he's built, you're going to avoid a lot of that, right? Because he's not hiring the cheapest guy.
No.
He's hiring a guy that he has repeated business with and hasn't burned him.
Yep.
So your chances are going to be a lot better.
Absolutely.
With those guys.
Okay, so you've got things started, you own it, you've got permits, you've got a clear plan, from construction, from the start of construction to basically the finish of the home. What else important happens that maybe you weren't doing at the start that you're maybe doing now as far as check-ins, follow-up, paying bills, like your process for that? Like where you were burned in the past that maybe you're not now as much?
I think keying in on the numbers along the way, get that QuickBooks account. Be in your QuickBooks account. Whether you're a QuickBooks person or not, either be that or hire somebody, but be in your numbers consistently throughout the deal, because you're going to be able to know where you're at and pivot if you need to.
Could you tell me midway through this what your payoff would be, what your current budget is, what you have left, and what your profit margin is?
Yeah, I could tell you that every step of the way because I have not only do I have it in the QuickBooks format, but I also have a spreadsheet that tracks everything and it accrues the interest daily. So I can go into that spreadsheet at any time and know exactly how much we've spent.
See, that is awesome. It gives you, for me anyway, because I think our brains kind of think a little similar. Like I like knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
But it gives you, what it does for me is it gives me confidence to be, okay, this is how this is going. I have enough resources to finish this one, but I probably actually have enough resources to do 3 or 4 more.
You can plan your portfolio.
You can plan
way more efficiently.
Instead of what happens all the time is like, oh, I ran out of money on this one, but I just bought 3 others. I got to wait 4 months to finish this one until I sell the other 2 because I got stacked up. So you avoid a lot of self-inflicted pain as a flipper by just simply being organized and thinking through what you need to do and then tracking it.
I think the other thing too is when you don't know, you almost become fearful to find out.
Yes.
And you delay decisions that will only get more painful the longer that you delay them, right? And that becomes stressful. I think it's Tim Grover that talks about that actually. Funny, he talks about like stress is just pressure that you've basically delayed.
Yes.
And I've felt that in the past, and that's where I'm saying know your numbers, because even if you let's say you have a partnership and you got a numbers guy partner, right? Even if he's the numbers guy partner, make sure that you know what the reports say. Make sure that you understand what the numbers say, because that's going to alleviate a lot of stress and help you, for whatever part in your partnership that you operate, be able to operate more clearly, more efficiently, and confidently and
there's something really powerful there that probably doesn't just happen in flipping, but in general life. When you said that, I thought of, you do build up that avoidance, and then you don't want to know that it could be bad news. And then it's easier to continue to self-sabotage yourself, where it's like, we'll take that lousy offer, or nope, I'm not worthy of this. Like you can compound your losses even more because it creates like this really negative and scary mindset.
You start taking bad deals to make up for that one.
Yep.
And that creates a bigger pit that you have to reconcile later.
Oh, that is so huge. We could probably do a whole seminar on this. But one thing I'm gonna say is like, you ought to consider putting together like your process that could be replicable for other flippers. I think there's a gold mine there. You can sell that.
Yeah, I've thought about it. It's just getting it's just an excuse. It's a time excuse. To compile it all and
I know. And then what works for you, it's hard to explain. Anyway, but
like if I put this down the way that I think of it, are they gonna run it that same way?
But even if they had it, the point is like, I guess sometimes even if your system's not as complex or proven as Chris's, you got to have something, even if it's like Post-it notes that to go back. Like you got to have some sort of system and process to track it. You can't just go blindly.
And it has to be shareable.
Yeah, it's got to be shareable.
You can't. You got to get it in a way where it's somebody else can read it and understand it. Because the other thing that I think about, right? I have partners. So if I died tomorrow, would they be able to pick up the pieces and continue that on, right? And so you want to make sure that whatever you're building, just build it right from the get.
Yep.
Start and know that you're going to adapt it.
You're going to adapt, yep.
But build it with that mindset from the beginning, and you'll end up with a pretty incredible system over the years.
Dude, I love it. I love it. Okay, so kind of fast forward. We're now, let's just walk us through quickly your steps and success that you've seen. The house is done.
Yeah.
You've executed, whether you hit your budget or not. Sometimes you go over. But anyway, you're here. What's kind of your next part of your system to get it sold?
Yeah, so I've always had a partnership that's been an agent of some sort, whether they're an agent or a broker. So typically, kind of from that point on, I kind of hand the listing side over to them. But we make sure that the staging, whether you're self-staging or hiring a staging company, you want to make sure that that matches the general aesthetic. It may not be everything that you would pick out, but you make sure of that, and then you get that marketed. And for me, one of the things that I've noticed, especially recently, is buyers are being a little more hesitant to making an offer. Mm-hmm. There may be interest in the property, but they're waiting to see what happens. So what I've been getting a lot more of recently is, people like, hey, tell me, can I meet with the buyer or the seller, me? Can I ask them some questions? Can we go through, and so it's involved me a little bit more, but it's kind of helped me see where they're coming from and what they want to know and what they're curious of. And so I'm locking all of that away for future properties. Mm-hmm. What do they find important? What are the questions that seem to really, be sitting with them as a buyer, so that I know how to influence my future inventory.
Yeah,
moving forward.
So hire very competent, well experienced agent that can market the property the right way, clearly stage it. Like if you just spent all this money on the remodel and did a great job, fill it with stuff. I mean, your staging here is great.
And I think that one of the key things is, if you're gonna, because there's all these flat listing services, which I get, right? If you understand the paperwork, you can be your own agent if you're not an agent, right? You can be your own, you can just sell it yourself and pocket that, but know the paperwork, know the process if you're gonna do that. But if you're gonna do that, be responsive.
Yeah.
Keep communication, because I can't tell you how many times, I've seen it where people are reaching out and they can't get a hold of the agent, and then I get called as an owner, that, hey, I can't get on. Maybe it's only been 4 hours, but that agent's blowing me up, or that potential buyer is blowing me up. So
just like everything, you got to have a process before to get your plans ready, get the colors picked out, get the game plan. You got to have a process and a system for getting the work done. You got to have a process for working with your lender, getting out, getting money. But then you also have to have a process for. And just like you said, the contractor, the agent, it's got to have a business mind first. Like they've got to be. It's not just like having a license isn't good enough.
Yeah. Yep.
Like being competent and I think responsive. It's like the basics. Like I can't tell you how many times a deal would have not gotten done or done. In fact, I heard it the other day. Like, well, we had an offer on the table, but our agent didn't tell us till the offer expired. I'm like, how in the world could that possibly ever happen?
But what's funny is, there's these even buyer's agents that we've been working with recently on different properties, and it's like you can't get a hold of them, and their clients are interested in the property, but it's like, oh yeah, sorry, I've been doing this or doing that, or
it's like, what business are you in? You're in the business to just take a life easy. Okay, well, this has been great. I've picked up some serious insights or relearned some things, mostly like that. Hire a bit, like that is so important, like in anyone that you're hiring, even if it's just like say it's a one-off thing, like learn from them if they're really serious about their business, and if they are, odds are they will do a pretty darn good job for you. So that was a big tip.
And your systems and processes will merge together. If you find somebody that's also a good business owner, you're going to be able to learn from one another, and you'll be able to come up with a system for working together that will only grow over time and improve.
That's awesome. Tell us about your favorite things of this house. And if you're comfortable, talk about the wins. And I know you haven't sold it yet. The market kind of turned right at the wrong time.
Right as we were getting ready to list
but
it.
Kind of talk about like where you thought you were going to end up budget-wise, where you ended up, what things went well, what things didn't. And then you can't control the market. So just assume that it hit when it should have hit.
So on this one, we estimated about $220 on the budget. And I think we came out at like $234, just over $234.
That's nailing it.
We're right there, right? And I post-mortem, looking at that, I can see where I think we could shave that down a little bit. But I think the biggest thing for us was just, knowing what that end product was going to look like, I think, and then having those numbers budgeted from the beginning. And then from there, just now that we're here and we haven't listed, I mean, we're still in it to make great money on this one. We're definitely not losing on this one.
Yeah.
But it's just taking longer to sell.
Take longer to sell.
Yeah.
Any major surprises? Like sometimes there are surprises that you don't see because you open up a wall and you're like, oh, that would have been nice to open up before we did our plans.
Yeah, I don't think there was really many surprises on this one. This one was actually pretty straightforward. It was, and that's one of the things too. When, like I said, when I walked into this house, I knew it was a good house.
Yeah.
The big headache houses, I have an eye for now, and I don't love them. Like there was a deal the other day that I was looking at, and I was like, flippers would be all over this, this deal. But I was looking, I was like, I already know this is gonna be more work than it's worth. I don't want it. I'm gonna pass on it. I know it has money in it.
Yep.
But I know it's gonna take, and I don't want it. This one, I knew from the very beginning it was gonna be a pretty smooth ride as far as what we needed to do to it. But I have another one that has great margin, but looking at it, it was definitely going to need more. And there was definitely a lot more engineering, a lot more headers and beams and all sorts of stuff that we had to not only add, but also correct from past ownership and past contractors. That we had to take over.
So over time, it's like anything. The more that you do, the more feel you get. And it's always going to be a math problem and data, but it also does move into more of a little bit of a gut based on your experience of how I want to end this then is if we were having this conversation 3 years from today, what is Chris Weaver doing and what does your business look like and what direction do you think you're headed?
Yeah, I think for me here moving forward is taking the skill sets that we've now developed, but trying to structure our financing and structure more deals to hold on to them. I've built, I think we've done enough homes now to know the process of getting it to be a great product, whether that's to resell or to rent out or to do like a mid or short-term rental on it. And so I think what we want to do is really, and I mentioned earlier, kind of, this market has forced me to start looking at other things.
Yeah.
I think what we're starting to put together now is something where we can start holding on to more property and not only benefiting from some cash flow in the meantime, but long-term equity growth, bringing in, the financing, the private money lenders that we bring in, probably going to start structuring more as a partnership in it rather than debt, and have them, be able to take part of some of the taxable benefits of real estate and creating some win-wins there. So I think the next 3 years is going to be a lot more buy and hold, and hopefully start scaling that to be more units, not just single family. There's definitely properties single family that we want to do that with, but I think now we can start looking at more multi-unit opportunities.
I love it. And at the end of the day, none of that would have been or could be possible if you didn't just get curious years ago and take that course, start educating yourself, and then that's not enough. You got to take that next step of action, reiterate, be reflective, what's working, what's not, how can I get better, how can I lean into my natural tendencies and personality, but then also having a bigger future. Your bigger future isn't just doing another house like this, which is so cool.
Yeah.
It's maybe doing more like this in scale, but then also holding on rentals and stuff like that. So
just another stepping stone to the next thing that we want to attack and go for.
I love it. Well, keep creating those waves, and thanks for showing us this house.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then please subscribe and check out the other content that's out there and the other links and stuff that I have to my stuff. So thanks.